Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's global daily conversation around COVID-19. My name is Sreenivasan, and I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for sharing this conversation. Thank you just for being here. It is Saturday night in New York, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and we have people watching around the world. Please tag your friends. Please hit share right now so that they can all join us. We would love to have them with us for the next hour. Our topic today is fascinating. We've done a version of this before. It's called News You Missed. Given everything that's happening in the world, it's very easy to miss what's happening because of the COVID-19. So we are going to talk to two journalists who are going to tell us what are stories we missed. But we want to hear from you. Tell us the stories that you think we're not paying attention to. This is episode number 59 of the Sree Daily Global COVID-19 show. The hashtag is Sree COVID-19 Call. Sree COVID-19 Call. We're live on Facebook, live on Twitter, live on YouTube, and live on LinkedIn. Please find me on those platforms. Please hit share. Please tag so that everyone can join us and see what we're doing. My email is right on the screen, sree@sree.net, SREE@SREE.net. We would love to have you share this with your friends and family so that they can all join us and learn from this very important conversation. Our guests are Bob Anthony at New York Bob. He's a veteran tech journalist, and at Vandana_Menon. She is a freelance journalist. She's in Philly, he's in Brooklyn. So I think we've got the Northeast covered well, and we are just super excited to have them join us. They will be here in a minute, but you can tell us, what are the stories we're missing? What are the things we're not covering? What is it you wish people knew about the crisis or around the crisis that we should be covering? First, let's thank our sponsors and tell you about them. We are sponsored by Nidhi Sinha, who's a great friend of the program. She has given an ad to support ProPublica. Congrats to ProPublica on its latest Pulitzer Prize. That makes 6 in 12 years. Journalism that holds the powerful accountable. Support ProPublica at a time when deep dive reporting is most needed. Donate today, propublica.org. propublica.org. We're also supported by Pratham USA. Please donate right now to help the needy in India to get better education. This is a program through Mother's Day, that is through tomorrow. They will double your dollars. Any donation will be doubled. Just go to prathamusa.org, prathamusa.org, or that link you see on your screen, prathamusa.link/rise for Pratham. Hashtag Rise for Pratham to support their responsive innovation to sustain education or RISE program. And we are just very grateful for all our sponsors for making it possible for us to bring you programming like this. People tell us every day how uplifting this is and how helpful this is. And I can tell you it is most uplifting and helpful to me personally. I'm so grateful to all of you. Tell us where you're watching from. We want to hear from you. Let's look at some of these comments here. Jonathan Burstein's in the house. Don't miss the new background. Yes, I'll talk about that new background in just a minute. And Pradnya says, lucky number 59. That's right, 59 days in a row we've been on lockdown here in New York, and 59 straight days we've done this show. We're doing it for you. We're doing it for us. We're all learning together. And Rose Horowitz is here, our incredible producer. 59 shows of production. She's awesome. Please follow her, Rose31. She's also on Twitter, and she's live tweeting and sharing. Pradnya is watching from Silver Spring, Maryland, and I will tell you a little bit more about her later. Ashok Sharma is watching. He says hello from Trivandrum in Kerala in India. He says economic and unemployment crisis around the world, especially in the US, is badly covered. Simran is watching. Hello from India. Tell us where in India we're watching from. We love to hear. And Sonali's watching from LA. Thank you so much. Look at this global audience we have. We're expecting to see more of you watching. And Susanna is watching from Mexico. I love it. Susanna, thank you for being here. Please tag a friend right now. Please WhatsApp a friend. Please share a friend. Please retweet everybody can benefit from this conversation. So please, please join us. We told you that Mother's Day is tomorrow in the United States. And so we have a special Mother's Day promotion that we're doing. And we want to tell you about this. This is an ad for our Mother's Day program, which will take place tomorrow. And we are doing two things tomorrow for Mother's Day. We are doing our weekly New York Times read along, 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. tomorrow, and then my usual positivity call, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we would love to have your mother get a shout out. Take a look at these very, very reasonable prices for you to give a shout out to a mother in your life, your mother, someone else's mother, a grandmother, an aunt, a mother figure. Just let us know and we will make that happen. Email me at Sree@Sree.net. Otherwise, the link is on your screen right now, digimentors.link/mothers, digimentors.link/mothers. Please tag a friend and tell them, tag a sibling, make your siblings pay for it. Half the proceeds go to Nick Kristoff's wonderful COVID-19 Impact Initiative. And Nick has retweeted this already today. You see me in a very embarrassing photo right on the screen with my mother in Tokyo. And then you see our friend Neil Parekh's mom on the right with her grandchildren. So thank you so much for watching. Please tag your friends right now and please join this. Email me if you have a question. The deadline is 10:30 today, so an hour and a half from today. If you would like your mom to get 2 shout outs in our morning 8:30 a.m. show where we read the New York Times, and in the evening when we will do the positivity event, all for a very reasonable price. You don't have to get flowers. Just give your mom a shout out. If you can't afford it, let me know and we'll give it to you free. That's how much we believe in the value of this, to give a shout out to a mother or a mother-like figure in your life. All right, let's bring on our guests. We are so excited to have them here. We are going to be joined by, first, here he is, Bob Anthony. Hi, Bob. Bob is watching from Brooklyn. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Another cold and windy night in Brooklyn with snow.
Yeah, snow in New York in May. Well, that tells you, if that doesn't tell you there's climate change, nothing will. And now let's go to Vandana Menon, who is joining us. She will be unmuting herself, and then we will bring her on here from Philadelphia. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Also, I'm in Philly. Another very cold day here. Surprisingly so. I went for a run yesterday. Today it's freezing.
Yeah, it was very, very cold. It's hard to understand how this is even possible. So let's tell everybody who these folks are. Vandana is one of our producers. She is stepping away from the production role a little bit so that she can concentrate on getting us these great stories. And she is based in Philadelphia. She just graduated from a master's program at the University of Pennsylvania. She's a journalist who has been working as a freelancer. She's also been at The Print, which is an amazing publication based in India. So thank you, Vandana, for being here, and 59 days of wonderful production. So thank you for that. And Bob Anthony is one of my mentors. Bob is an amazing technology journalist. He's been on the job for, let's say, a few years, Bob. We don't want to get into our ages, do we? And he has paved the way for so many of us to understand how to do technology reporting at the highest level. And he will be focused on some technology and other stories. And this whole thing started, Bob, if you remember, I was walking the dog and talking to you about some of the news items that I hadn't heard, including, I want to give a shout out to all the transit workers. Your father was a motorman in New York City subway transit system. Just tell us again how this genesis of this idea that we must cover news we missed.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I was telling my friends, you have to be careful what you tell to Sree because you end up on a webinar. But yeah, my father was a car inspector, not a motorman. He had some of the motorman's tools as a matter of course. But yeah, we were talking way back then about this fire that happened on the number 2 train. It burnt a subway car to the shell. And it closed the 110th Street station on Central Park North for the better part of 2.5 weeks while they repaired it. It was covered, but it was barely covered. I mean, you didn't even. It turned out that the person who set the fire in the train also set fires at 86th Street, 96th Street, and 116th and Lennox, and further up on the 2 train. You didn't even know that your station was closed that day on account of this. So yeah, we got the idea that day that maybe we should do these webinars on things that we missed and things that just get overlooked. So it's turned out pretty good, better than a non-broadcast person like me would have suspected.
Well, but you really understand. You have a nose for news, even though your focus is tech. You have a nose for news. Maybe later I will show people how close that subway station is. I can see it from here, and I didn't know. That tells you something about the crisis we're in. I should also give a shout out to Bob. He's been here from the beginning. He was on our 3rd show. I don't know if he remembers that, but he was on our 3rd show talking about tech, and maybe we'll get some tech tips a little later. But let's get right into it, into some stories. Vandana is going to show some, and Bob's going to show some. Bob, let's start with you. What's the story you want us to talk about first?
Well, let's talk about Zoom just for the heck of it, since a lot of us have had to deal with Zoom. I think I put it first on my list as a web conferencing platform. It's been in the news a lot because some people have been abusing it. They've been what they call Zoom bombing into meetings. Like you'll be having a meeting with your staff and some idiot will come in and start swearing or just yelling, just messing, just ruining what you're trying to do. So Zoom took a big hit. New York City schools stopped using it for a while. A number of corporations said we will not use Zoom. They'll try Skype or anything else. So Zoom has finally responded. This week, they started running out version 5. And it has, in addition to security improvements, they've done things, simple things, like change some of the default settings so that it's harder, much more difficult for someone to Zoom bomb and to get into your meeting. And just one thing that people might not know, they might figure, well, I can just keep using Zoom, my current version. As of May 30th, if you don't upgrade to version 5, it will upgrade itself. So if you have a meeting the next day, you might end up upgrading while other people are in the meeting. So that's something that's coming down the pike pretty soon, this Zoom upgrade.
So does this mean that like we should stop? So should I uninstall and reinstall Zoom? Would that be better?
Only if it's giving you problems. Chances are, when next time you open Zoom, you'll see you should get a notification that there's a new version available. Click on the icon head or your face, however it comes up, and there should be a little notification in there if you have an upgrade coming. But on May 31st, I'm sorry, on May 30th, it'll happen anyway.
Automatically, okay.
And they also bought.
But you're
company, right?
basically good to go.
Bob, they bought a company that does security, some encryption software, right?
They had to. I don't remember the name of the company, but yeah, they've been hunting for technology they can basically import to tighten up what they have. That's sort of a big thing right now. Startups that have little pieces of, this wasn't a startup, but companies that have little pieces of really good software are sort of in demand for acquisition, or at least for licensing, because security in these web conferences, I mean, I'd hate it if, say, a Red Sox fan bashed into this web conference. That'd be like the worst possible thing.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us. You're watching a conversation that I'm having with New York Bob at New York Bob spelled out on Twitter, and Vandana_Menon. And Vandana and Bob are going to kind of go back and forth with stories we ought to know. So let's get Vandana's pick. We have, just so you know how we're doing this, we have a Google Doc from which we are working, and therefore we're going to show you the stories. So Vandana, whenever you're ready, let's go to your story. Tell us what you picked as a thing we need to look at next.
So my first pick was a story about India's geo platform. Just to set this into context, like Ashok said earlier, there's been economic and unemployment crises across the world. Just this week, there have been protests in both Afghanistan and Lebanon over food. People have been going on the streets protesting unequal food distribution, and people actually died in Afghanistan today. But in the middle of this crisis, Jio has managed to land $8 billion in investments from Facebook, Vista Equity, and I think Silver Lake, another private equity firm. And in 3 weeks, Vista Equity and Silver Lake made their investments over the last 2 days. And it's I don't know if, how many people know about Jio Platforms, but it's run by Mukesh Ambani. It's a telecom giant in India. There are I think almost there are almost 400 million users in India who are hooked onto it. And Facebook has now, this is their largest private investment, I believe, nearly $6 billion. And it's in the middle of this entire crisis, it seems that there is still some money that's going into businesses in India.
That's certainly exciting for people who are tracking that. But we should point out that this is all new and this is happening kind of in real time. And for people who haven't heard of Vista Equity Partners, there are two interesting connections here. Robert Smith, who runs it, is African American, which tells you something. One of the most successful private equity companies in the world is run by an African American named Robert Smith, and his partner is Brian Seth, who is Indian. And so we see that as not the typical private equity companies that most people are used to seeing. And that's what you're seeing there as well. So that's the story you picked. Let me go to Bob and just bring him in to see what does Bob think, what does this mean in terms of the importance of kind of the global market and what Robert Smith is doing here.
Can I just add before that? Silver Lake hasn't. This is one of Silver Lake's first international investments as well. They've invested $1 billion in Twitter the last month or the month before that. But this is the first time that they're investing such a huge chunk of money in India.
So Bob, what do you think?
I'm just impressed that anybody's getting business done at this time. It's stunning, but it's a reminder that the world hasn't stopped spinning. That you can, people are still talking, people are still dealing, and that's rather significant. This level of business, you would have thought that most of this would have shut down, or at least sort of gone dormant.
Yeah, one of the things I will say to everybody is, out of this is going to come many opportunities. There are obviously going to be many losses in terms of small businesses that will go under, newspapers that are going under, things like that. But out of every crisis comes a lot of new ideas, new opportunities, and we're going to see that for sure, as we saw after 2001, 2008, and now we'll see it again. And it just depends on how people react and what they're doing. Let's give a shout out to some of the people who are watching. Carla is watching from West Virginia, and the other Carla is watching from New Jersey. Carla Baranakis, awesome lady who helps us with so many of our speakers for especially the New York Times read along, and we're just really lucky that she's with us. She's a former copy chief of the New York Times, and maybe for Bob and Vandana and me, three journalists, do a lot of reporting. When we hear copy editors, we've got to be on alert because we've got to be perfect. Otherwise, they will get us, right, Bob?
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm one of them. I was a copy editor for the Daily News for a few years, so I'm not afraid of you guys.
Okay. Let's keep going. Let's see who else is here. So many folks watching from around the world. We're just so grateful. Doug is watching from San Francisco. Grateful for this community and Sree's leadership. Watching from Marin County, California. He's SF Doug on Twitter. Please do follow him. Simran is watching from Punjab. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'd love to hear. And Francis McDonald is watching from New York City on Twitter. Sky1905. Ashok says, really great 59 shows. We're going to keep going, folks. So please say hello. Join us. Eliza Cooper, my dear Eliza, we haven't talked in a while. I think my dear Eliza is a line and maybe in Hamilton, but Eliza Cooper and I work together on many projects. She's an awesome lady. Please connect with her. And Eliza, let's make a phone date or a Zoom date. And Dharmender says, good reports. Thank you very much. And Rose says, thank you. You watched all 59. And let's see who else is here. Stefan is here. Bob and Vandana, Sree, are you in a model apartment in your building? All right, it can be revealed what is happening here because Bob and Vandana know me so well now from these shows. I got to tell you, I got kicked out of my apartment. Here's what happened. I'm very loud on a regular basis, but on these shows, I'm really loud. And we've been working late into the night. We've had not just these shows, but prep for the next shows. And our business of virtualizing events around the world has just been, we've been very busy with that. So I've had calls with clients at 1 a.m., midnight, etc. And it's noisy for the family. And so they conspired with our friend Rajni, whose apartment in Manhattan was empty, and it's in our building. And so she very kindly agreed to let me use the apartment because the deal was either she lets me use this apartment, is what I believe my wife and the kids said to Rajni. Otherwise, we will kill him. So either you have to arrange a funeral or you have to let him do this. And they were very kind to let me use the apartment for these calls and for some of my business planning meetings. So that is the secret. It's been revealed. And after 59 days, I did get kicked out. So my kids and wife are very tolerant, but even they have a limit. And just thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for participating. Tim also noticed from Pennsylvania. And Rose is saying to everybody, glad you could join us. And it's just great to see the entire community. My mom's watching from Kerala. Hi, Mom. She's just so impressed with the very nice, different apartment that I have. But it is not ours, Mama. And it's Mother's Day tomorrow. We call her Amma, as we say in Kerala. We say Amma. She's watching from there. Mark Lee's watching from Durham, North Carolina. And others are watching from all over the world. Let's go with some more stories because otherwise I'll just be doing the greetings. So Bob, what do you have for us?
Well, let's jump back to the subways for the heck of it. Just for the tomorrow is going to be, like you said, Mother's Day, but it's also May 10th, and that was my father's birthday. So there were a lot of years where, you had the birthday and Mother's Day the same.
Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Day, so I'd end up. Us might be familiar with the old 32 trains. They're the oldest ones in the system. They have the corrugated side. That was quick, Sree. You got the video up there really quick. And they're slated for retirement. At the beginning of this pandemic, obviously the subway system didn't need as many trains rolling around. So one of the first to go were these R32s, which were built in 1964, 1965. There was the danger, I'm a subway fanatic, there was the danger they might disappear without notice, without a retirement ceremony, like they recently did for the R42 a few months ago. And these are notable for being some of the most reliable trains the system has ever purchased. The YouTube feed you're looking at is a guy named DJ Hammers. Not sure if he's a motorman, not sure if he's a executive, but he takes really cool subway videos but he adds a lot of history to them. You learn a lot. And I'm a nut about subways, and I learn a lot watching his videos. In any case, it looks like the R32s will be coming back. Probably not in large numbers because the city is still receiving its new cars. But for a nostalgic person like me, it would have been a shame for them to disappear without notice. So next time you see one of these ribbed cars rattling into the station, and you'll know because the brakes are twice as loud as the newer ones, just give a tip of the hat because they've done their job extremely well, and they would have been overlooked if not for people like DJ Hammers and some other people.
Wow, DJ Hammers, thank you. And thank you, Bob. I want to give a shout out again to your father. You said it would have been his birthday. Talk about him a little bit, please. Tell us what his job was exactly and how he fit into the most complicated subway and public transportation system in the world.
I mean, when he was still working, the subway had nowhere near the budget that it has right now for maintenance. So if a train needed a part, you were probably going out into the subway yard and pulling it from something that's been wrecked, or doing the best you can to manufacture the part yourself. So in any case, his title was car inspector, which still exists, and it's basically making sure the train is ready to go out of the yard for what they call revenue service. In other words, to pick up passengers. And it's a tough job, even on a good day. There's actually a YouTube video put out by the MTA that explains what a car inspector does on the official MTA channel. I give him a lot of credit for putting kids through college, working a job like that for so many decades. So on May 10th, well, tomorrow, happy birthday, Dad. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. You're not here, but you're definitely here in spirit for all the work you've both done in this disappointing kid that you put out. But
not disappointing at all, Bob. Not at all. Bob, tell us about your mom. We can't talk on Mother's Day without also talking about your mother.
Exactly. She's a New Yorker. My father came from the West Indies. She's a New Yorker. Family traces back to the South, but I mean, she was a homemaker basically. But I remember she was working at this pre-K ages ago, of course, and she was putting out the pre-K the pre-K's well, whatever it was, kindergarten's newsletter. And she was putting it out by hand. And I found some copies of those ages ago, and I realized that the newspaper spirit must have come from that originally, because she was always good with handwriting, always slapped good grammar into me, so to speak. And I give her a lot of credit for at least my trying to be accurate as a journalist.
Well, we're thinking of all our mothers and fathers and grandparents in our lives right now, and some of us are separated by distance, some of them have passed on, and we salute your parents and wish your family, Bob, the very, very best. Thank you for bringing that and tying that all together. And now even people who have never been to New York know the New York City subway cars and know a little bit about that from movies, but now they know it from you as well. Everybody check out DJ Hammers. Turns out he is doing really interesting videography and YouTubes around, or YouTube videos. I'm talking like somebody who doesn't know anything about the internets or the interwebs. I called it YouTubes. One of my pet peeves is when people say, send me a blog, and they mean like a blog post, and they say blog. So I shouldn't be saying YouTube. Very bad. All right, let's move on to Vandana, who's got a story out of Brazil that she wants us to see. So I'm going to pull that up right now. We're going to go to Brazil. I love this global tour we're on. So go ahead, Vandana, take it away.
So deforestation has been continuing in Brazil, and apparently in the first 4 months of 2020, more than 55%. Forest destruction has increased by more than 55%, and lots of indigenous land is being given away. Indigenous people are finding themselves the last bastion, having to fight against their land being taken away from them. And all of this is being exacerbated by President Bolsonaro, and he's been denying his involvement in all of this, even though last week he authorized the army to go in and help this technically illegal deforestation to continue. And it's just heartbreaking because it seems like he's using this time to do this. And at this point, I think there was a news story out recently that said that it was the hottest year in Europe last year. 2019 was the hottest year ever in Europe, and climate change is just spiraling out of control. And here we have such vast, expansive amounts of land being razed to the ground. So it's really quite sad.
It is really sad. And for people who haven't been paying attention, Mr. Bolsonaro is like a baby Trump, but worse in many ways. And among other things, he fired the health minister for telling the truth about coronavirus and how it's a problem there. And so these are just terrible things. Now, Bob, how do you reflect on this story?
Yeah, it's another under the radar story. I've been following a little bit of that, and you're right. There are so many parallels between Trump and what's happening there, in firing the health minister and in not taking the medical facts, letting the politics overrun everything. When the history of this pandemic is written, there's going to be a lot of parallels seen between the two countries. But she brings up an excellent point in how the deforestation is is happening while much of the world isn't looking. A lot of people in the U.S. would be looking there, but obviously we're a little tied up.
Slightly distracted, and that's a problem in this as well. So, Vandana, how are you keeping in track of the news? For anybody watching, this is our special news you missed episode. Doesn't mean you missed every single thing, but just we're all missing so much. So, post in the comments if you have any things that you want us to talk about. I'm just going to ask Vandana Menon, who's a freelance journalist out of Philly, and we're also talking to Brooklyn-based. Our Brooklyn-based friend Bob Anthony. She's Vandana_Menon. He's at New York Bob. So folks, please talk to us in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us what news we have missed that we should know. And Vandana is going to talk a little bit about how she is keeping up beyond COVID-19.
Yeah, so I'd like to recommend a couple of newsletters. Foreign Policy actually does an excellent newsletter. Every Friday, I think, they send out a newsletter saying things that have happened while you weren't looking. And I referenced some of the previous weeks when we were planning this call. And I get most of my news from Twitter and lately Instagram. I didn't expect to find Instagram as a source of news, but it's been very interesting because there's so many accounts now that have cropped up that are providing kind of non-main, like things that have fallen out of the mainstream and that aren't being covered by mainstream media. I get that I'm referring mostly to news about India. That's because the Indian media has been having issues with freedom of speech lately. I mean, especially so lately. And so I've been going to Instagram for a lot of news, and that's been really fun.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Let's look at some of the people who've been writing in. Sandeep is asking, when is the peak in India? And I've not been following closely enough. I don't know if Vandana knows, otherwise she can look it up. And frankly, nobody knows exactly where any of this is going, right? We're supposed to, in the US, it's supposed to curve, right? That we're supposed to flatten the curve. And it's not flattening. It's certainly, the curve is down, we're past the apex, but it's plateauing at a high level, which is one of the problems we are having right now as we look at this. Let's see, Mark is saying some people are looking at Google Meet because of the problems that Bob described earlier with Zoom. Helm Apollo says, hey, Sree, thank you. Sandeep says, better use Cisco WebEx. So that's good. And Sky1905, to update your Zoom app, please visit zoom.com/download. This is something that Bob would appreciate. I had an conversation with the CIO of Zoom, and it was not a public interview, but he said we could quote him on some of these things. And he said that he had 10 million customers in December, and in February, he had 300 million customers. Just imagine that for a tech company. It sounds like a great positive dream, but it's a nightmare in some ways, right, Bob?
Yes, I mean, companies like Zoom, they're big enough to scale, but not scale like that. Amazon can scale, Microsoft can scale when it comes to a sudden bump in users, but nobody could have been ready for that kind of bump.
And that's why we're seeing some of the issues that we have seen there. Let's see who else is watching and who else is talking here. Let's see here. Simran says, Bob and Vandana, will America relocate companies from China to India?
I actually have a fun, last week or the week before that, India said that they were going to cut down on foreign direct investment from countries that they share land borders with, and essentially China, that was targeted at China. But there was a really fun story by Bloomberg Quint the other day that said that India is clearing land that is twice the size of Luxembourg to help lure companies out of China and give them space to build campuses in India. And apparently they've allocated this land across India. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it's supposed to be twice the size of Luxembourg. So It looks like
That's fascinating, Vandana. But I gotta say, I don't know how big Luxembourg is. So it's a strange country to pick, right? Like you would pick.
I don't.
We see this in New York news, American news all the time, Bob. Don't we? Say it's twice the size of Rhode Island, and like I have no idea how big Rhode Island really is. I know it's not that big.
That's why it stuck with me, because I'm remembering Luxembourg. It just seemed like an odd headline, but yeah.
So let's go to the copy editor and Bob Anthony. What would you say about that story?
That's very interesting because politically speaking, China is in big trouble in terms of growth coming out of new U.S. companies. The fact that they're clearing land for basically what is it? Multiple corporate parks, or I guess the infrastructure is there. India has a large population of well-educated techie folks. So that's very interesting if they're trying to lure that type of business from China to the US, which will be easier to do for a lot of companies who simply don't want to pay US wages.
I think that's exactly right, and that's something that we're going to be seeing as we go along here. So let me ask you, Bob, how are you keeping up with the news given everything that's going on?
I try to look away. I'm sorry. Try to look away from the TV sometimes and get on my internet radio. Once in a while, I'll pick up like a station in Milwaukee or Indianapolis just to see what's happening out there, and that does help. And I get a couple of feeds from some of my apps that I use. She was saying Instagram. I get actually some good news tips out of that platform. I just found out that this bed and breakfast that I stayed at a few years ago, it's basically the most unplugged place you'd want to find in St. Augustine. You can really lay back. But they're using tech to come back from the coronavirus. They're adding tech to their rooms to make it so you don't have to interact with people as much.
Oh, so interesting. Steve Taylor is watching from Philadelphia, and Steve is one of our people on our production team. Folks, if you like what you're seeing here, you would like your own show, let us know, and we'll help you get your own show. We do virtualizing of events. These are just some of the things our team does, including we can make your own live web show. We can help you convert your in-person event into a virtual event. We can help you with training, consulting. We can be 10% of your production team, or 110%. Do get in touch with us. We'd love to work with you. Our company is called DigiMentors. We've been doing things with Princeton University, Hong Kong University, individuals, companies all over the world, and we're going to continue to do that, and we would love to talk to you about it. Just email me, Sree@Sree.net, SREE@SREE.net. We would love to talk to you. And Steve, who is from Philadelphia on our production team, is going to be helping tomorrow with the New York Times read-along. What is the read-along? Well, that's when we talk about the New York Times out loud on social media. We read it out loud on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and we have a fabulous guest. On Mother's Day, we have a mother who's going to be joining us. Pradnya Haldipur is a mom, philanthropic strategist, and executive director at Magic Bus USA. You'll hear all about it tomorrow, 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. A great chance for you to chat and listen and read the New York Times with us. We do this every Sunday. I've been doing it for 5 years, folks. Where have you been? Some of you have been there right with me, but now we've taken it to a whole other level. Please do join us, and it's a chance for you to chat and learn from all of us and learn together. We love doing that, and because it's Mother's Day, we have that wonderful chance for you to do a shout out to your mom, and we're calling it Thank a Mom on Mother's Day. Get an ad to read a message to her on the air, mention on the air with a pic and a collage, scroll a thank you across the screen like you see right here, very inexpensive. Please tag your friends or your siblings, make them pay for it, and half the proceeds will go to Nick Kristoff's wonderful COVID-19 Impact Initiative, C19 Impact Initiative. So please tell your friends to join us. Let's look at some more of the comments coming in. We have more than 100 comments that have come in, and so we're still behind, folks. We're still catching up. Arindam is talking about Silver Lake Partners, and Helm is watching from Las Vegas. And Bob and Vandana, there were some crazy stories out of Vegas, right? We had basically the mayor said, "I want everything open," and then she was said, "Well, will you go into the casino?" She said, "No, I'm busy. I won't do that." And and Vegas is one of those places that needs tourists to survive, needs folks to survive. I was supposed to be there in July for a conference, and it was part of my income for this year, and that is gone. I'm not saying that for any pity, but just to say that there are entire businesses that are losing real revenue and are really in trouble as a result. One of the things that Bob Anthony said to me on one of our calls, he said that there's a show in Las Vegas that he goes to every year called Consumer Electronics Show, or CES, where they debut all the cool stuff. And he said that he's not sure if he would go if it was open in 2021 unless there was a vaccine. Was that your thinking, Bob?
Basically, unless I knew that I had the antibodies, and if I thought I had some level of protection, I would go. But right now, yeah, it's not looking good. Nobody wants to be in a crowded conference room, and they do get packed in Vegas while this is still going on.
Yeah, and he's at New York, Bob, and a CES without New York, Bob, just doesn't make sense. It would be, like Robert Redford saying, "I'm not going to go to, I don't know, to the Oscars, or I'm not going to, his Sundance Festival," because then what is that then? If people who are in the business, who know the business best, are raising these questions, then what makes it that, right? It's not Vegas that makes it, it's the people who make those conferences, and it's the networking and the hanging out at the bar and talking and exchanging business cards. All of that is almost impossible to imagine, but we will be seeing some of it as we come back. Vandana, is there anything that you wouldn't do that you would otherwise would love to do, that you would give you kind of, I want to be a little careful?
I think I'm going to wear masks more in general, like while stepping out. I think that's really, what I'm going to do. I was thinking the other day, I'd really love to watch a movie again in the theater with like popcorn. I missed that. So that's definitely something I would be doing.
All right. Folks, we're about 15, 20 minutes left, and we want your comments and your questions to come in. Sharon's watching from Philadelphia. Niranjan's watching from Nepal. Tim says he used to be a copy editor as well. Yay to copy editors. Simran's watching from Chandigarh in Punjab in India. And Helm says, "I can't believe I didn't get into this earlier. This makes for a fine Saturday in quarantine." Thank you so much. What a great comment. And I'll see if I can get these folks back. Not every Saturday, because we want to let them do other things. But Vandana certainly, as part of our production team here, is with us. And I know Bob is with us many, many days. Mark says, "I watched the majority, maybe more than half of them." Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Mark says, "We got some good news. Great news. Durham, because of Duke, is listed along with Madison, Austin, and a few other cities as being the best position to recover." Let's hear from Bob, your take on that. Just to remind people who are watching outside the United States, these are schools where there are big universities, right? Durham, North Carolina, because of Duke University; Madison, because of the University of Wisconsin; Austin, because of the University of Texas. So maybe you can explain a little bit about how these giant state schools, and Duke is not a state school, have kind of disproportionate impact on their small towns.
Oh, that's a very good point he makes. I went to grad school for journalism at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and right, that school takes over that capital city. It puts in so much to that community's income base. And I've been to Austin, which of course it's a techie city anyway. It gets overwhelmed by South by Southwest, the big music, tech, et cetera conference, which is not happening this year. And Duke I have not been to, but like every other college basketball fan, I hate Duke, but that's another story. But yes, but all of those cities are, that's a good point. I guess they would be well suited because they're very young population because of the students, which makes them agile, able to adjust to a new normal. And even though they do have an established base of old residents. So I would think those three cities, Durham, Austin, and Madison, would have and they're all sort of mid-sized cities. I think they'd have a better chance of recovering quickly since they're manageable.
Yeah, and of course, I forgot about your Madison connection, and that's really cool. That's one of the cities that they mentioned. And we're looking here. Doug says, I'm a transit geek, and this is so cool. And Stefan, referring to my getting kicked out, he says his son and his wife are about to do the same for him. I may be in the attic soon as I create special slots for more photographers for his Spin It social hour. He's amazing. He's got this terrific show that you should follow him on Spin It Social so that you can see the Spin It Social Hour, where he is interviewing award-winning photographers. You'll learn a lot about not just photography, but about how to tell stories in today's age. We've got lots of folks asking questions. Gyani says, I just had a question. Is this channel sold? This is part of Scroll.in. We're simulcasting on Scroll.in. Scroll is one of India's leading news, culture, and analysis websites. I urge you to check it out, Scroll.in. And they have 2 million plus fans on their channels, and we're just grateful to be part of that. Jonathan says, I'd like 2 stories I'd like to know more about. How COVID-19 is being handled in Mexico, and the full story of which local mom and pops will survive and which will close. Gem Spa made a few headlines, but there may be many more. I'm going to ask our friend Susana Cejas, who's watching in Mexico, to type in and tell us what's happening in Mexico, because your president, who has been at times in opposition to, as all presidents have in Mexico, to Trump's foreign policy, in some ways has been trying to outdo Trump in for not doing the social distancing and jumping in and hugging people and all of that. So I am curious about that too. So Susana, please do tell us. We have other comments also coming in. Do you have any thoughts, Vandana? Have you seen anything about mom and pop shops? And then if you haven't, we'll ask Robert about it as well.
I don't know what they are. Mom and pop shops?
Yeah, so they are just these, you think about the local economy, and these are the shops that are not those chain stores. And I know we all love certain stores like that. And by the way, Bob, this is also a great example of how language, right, that what we use in America doesn't translate,
Yes.
and vice versa.
You're exactly right. Exactly right. A simple term like that doesn't translate.
Yeah, and that's something that we're all learning about, and that's why we have this global conversation. We don't want just people in England to talk to each other, or people in India, or people in America to talk to each other. We want to talk across all the channels here. Helm Apollo Ali says, the president of Amherst College sent a letter today outlining the dangers of failing to bail out state governments because of the threats to the university, public university systems. So there are 2 Amherst, right? There's the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and there's Amherst College. And so one of these folks has written in to say this. So thank you for telling us. Twyla is also talking about tech towns, college towns and tech as something that's very important. And Jonathan says, as one Mexican leader said, alas, poor Mexico, so far from God, so close to the United States. And Susana says, COVID deaths underreported in Mexico. Great piece in the New York Times 2 days ago. And this is certainly something Susana says, indeed. And now you're seeing this conversation. Suddenly the East Village is talking to Mexico City, and a lot of research and other things are coming in here. Pradhangela says, I love the setup of the show. Thank you very much. This is, I'm in Manhattan in one part of New York. That gentleman there, Bob Anthony, is in another part of New York City in Brooklyn. And Vandana is in Philadelphia. She's in a college town, really. Philadelphia is full of universities, Drexel, UPenn, of course. And then in the surrounding area, there's a whole bunch of colleges, right?
The area I live in is actually called University City because it's on campus. There are 3 big campuses in that area. So it's University City in West Philly. There are lots of big campuses. Here also, there's been a lot of confusion. I think Penn, the university I went to, has announced that it's next semester will most likely be virtual, which is throwing, now there's lots of questions up in the air about whether students are going to come back, how they're going to handle that. Stores here are open. It's all of the mom and pop stores are open. Restaurants are also open. There doesn't seem to be any sort of I think because the weather has been so lovely as well lately, people have been out and about. I just hope there are no students who are stranded here without university housing. I just hope that they're taken care of right now.
And do you think it's expensive right there for students?
It is. It is, especially for international students. I don't know what the situation is like, but a lot of undergraduate students were asked to leave the dorms and housing, and now students who have no option because their home countries might be in lockdown, they're paying daily rates, I believe, to stay on campus.
And that certainly makes it tough for them. We have lots of questions and comments coming in, and Bob, this is the part of the show where we turn you into a tech advice shop. It's great for the two Indians not to be the tech advisors, right? Normally people presume the Indian folks are going to be answering your tech support, but here we're turning Bob into our tech support here. Question from Stefan Kaplan. Hey Bob, question for you. Is there a certain Ethernet cable you recommend for hardwiring my MacBook to my Fios modem in my house? I need a 100-foot cable because of where the modem is and where my office is way upstairs. Thank you, he says. So just explain why in a world of Wi-Fi, where everybody's going for Wi-Fi, he's going retro into a wired cable.
Well, that's a good point. Using a wired internet connection can shield you basically from a lot of the maladies that come from, say, a wired headset or using Wi-Fi. There's so much Wi-Fi, there's so many cell phones, there's so many wireless connections going on around a big city like New York. You get a lot of noise. So even if you have a great router, great setup, there's a good chance you'll get data dropouts. With a wired Ethernet connection, you're connected directly to your router, directly to your computer. The chances of a data flow dropout is so minimized just by using a wire and not using the Wi-Fi. As far as brand of cable, it's basically well, here's a good tip: go to the dollar store. If they have 100-foot cables, those things are commodities now. There's no need to get the gold-plated this or that. A good solid-looking Ethernet cable from your discount store will work just as good as the expensive one from Best Buy, in my opinion.
Wow, I had no idea, because I was looking at these and thinking you have to buy the most expensive kind. So thank you. Of course, we should remind people that the dollar store isn't actually $1. Almost nothing there is $1. Yeah, but right. But it's a good way to get people in. And by the way, it also it just triggered something in my mind about that awful story about a guard at a local dollar store out in, I think it was in Michigan, right? He was just doing his job and was enforcing social distancing guidelines and told a customer to put on her mask. She goes out, she tells her husband, the husband comes in and shoots this man to death on the spot. Just absolutely horrifying story. All this man was doing was enforcing the state's distance guidance, and that's what we have ended up with here. It is so outrageous, so inappropriate. Already we see African Americans in this country are disproportionately affected by this virus, and then you see an African American man gunned down in that story. And then, of course, if we say that, we also have to tie it to the other story from February, but the video just came out, and you saw that father and son taking the life of a young man out for a jog, and they shot him to death. And it's just absolutely unacceptable. People are complaining about that footage being shown. Well, that's the footage that got this family, the father and son, arrested for shooting an unarmed black boy as he was running around, a young man, as he was running, just jogging in the neighborhood, and they shot him to death. So unacceptable. Vandana, as you are seeing this, you come from a country, as I do, where we have lots of problems, but daily shootings are not one of them.
Yeah, no, it's something I think about a lot. As a woman, anyway, walking on the street at night, I'm paranoid. But ever since I came to the US and have been living here, there's that double fear at the back of my mind about the fear of being shot. That's just never something had to actively think of in India. It's absolutely heartbreaking. I found it so. I actually avoided watching the video for the longest time because I just found it so triggering. And then finally I did, and it was just. I'm glad that the dad has been arrested, and I really hope. I hope somehow. I don't know. It's hard to say because I desperately want change to happen, and I just hope that it can.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Bob. Let's go to your thoughts on both those stories.
Well, the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, that's a good example. Some new details came out this week, and not all of them surfaced. Somebody looked up, well, a couple of journalists, I guess through Freedom of Information, looked up a letter that the local DA sent to the police chief in Glenn County. And I won't get into the deepest details, but the logic, there was such a lack of logic in that letter that it was just astonishing. I have it up, and I'll just read a couple lines from it. And we've seen the video with the jogger running around the outside of the van of the pickup, and then some kind of fight starting in the front, a tussle over a gun and a shot. But the way, excuse the glasses and the lean over, this is what the district attorney says. The district attorney says that Arbery started the fight, and even though the other person had the finger on the trigger, that the person who died might have fired it himself because in the struggle. And the last line is what gets me. Arbery's mental health records and prior convictions help explain his apparent aggressive nature and his possible thought pattern to attack an armed man. If you the logic, the lack of logic in this district attorney's findings of in not charging the father and son is just astonishing once you read it. It's something that's only been reported within the last couple of days, but it shows you the level of injustice of that case. So I agree with Vandana that I'm glad that we at least have an arrest and get the ball rolling on some type of justice.
Yeah, absolutely. Sonali is watching. She's talking also. She's connecting this also to the attacks that Asian Americans are undergoing in this country right now because of the use of the president's words like Wuhan virus and the Chinese virus, and just emphasizing that. And after that had died down, right, Vandana, for a little while, it spiked again because they're now pushing this conspiracy theory that this was done in a Chinese lab rather than coming out of those wet markets, as we know it did. And so it's just so upsetting. Sonali is also recommended, by the way, I'm talking to my producer right now in Vandana, that her 84-year-old uncle, who is an amazing scientist and astrophysicist and was a dear friend of Stephen Hawking, would be a great guest for our show. He's 84 years old. We'd love to have him. We'll find the right opportunity to talk to him. Thank you so much, Sonali, for recommending him. One of our viewers is asking you, Vandana, what did you mean by the freedom of speech issue in India?
Well, lately that a few weeks ago, Anantal Dumde and Gautam Navlekha were arrested. They were charged for inciting riots that took place in 2019 January, and it just seemed a convenient excuse to arrest people and clamp down on freedom of speech. Arnab Goswami also had a bit of and Sree, I know you talk about Arnab Goswami sometimes and describe him as his news channel Republic TV, and I know that you just describe it as further right than Fox News, and he's also been saying similar to what's happening in the United States. In India, coronavirus is being linked to Islamophobia and is being linked to Muslims. And so Arnab Goswami recently said all sorts of in communalism is a problem in India, and he makes several communally charged statements. And so police complaints were filed there. Even the other day, the Kerala government filed a police complaint against another journalist. I'm not saying that these journalists are saying the right things or the wrong things. However, there is a clampdown on freedom of speech right now.
And what we're finding, I think, in India, as also in American media, many people are, talking about what's right and what's wrong, but we're also seeing some elements of media enterprises that are so worried about how they'll be seen with the government that there might be even self-censorship in what they're doing. Corporate media, you see that a lot in multiple places, including the United States. We have lots of comments coming in and lots of questions as well. And Helm says, yes, I haven't watched the Ahmad video. I just can't anymore. It's taking a cup of filth and pouring it over your head. Those are strong words there, Bob, but I think that we have to ask the question, when will this country, which you have seen, which I have seen for 50 plus years, we thought there was some kind of post-racial moment in Barack Obama's presidency, but I think in many ways things got worse because he was a black man and he was there. And then the Trump machine and the Trump propaganda has made everything worse. Tell me about your views as an African-American yourself.
Yeah, I definitely feel the pushback because Trump deals in slogans. He deals in short sound bites that his followers will basically eat and digest no matter what he says. He's their president. And yeah, you would have thought in the post-Barack Obama era that we'd get to a new level of understanding and tolerance. But in that recent Michigan protests open up the state of Michigan, I recognized one of the speakers as David Clark. He's the former black sheriff of Milwaukee County, and he's an African American, but he's a Trump advocate of all things, and he was cheered on loudly by that crowd, because here he was basically saying, "You're right. We blacks have what we need. We don't need anything else, and we solved everything in the '60s." He said that before.
Oh my God!
So yeah. It is really disappointing. He's a familiar figure. He wears cowboy hats, and how he became sheriff of a relatively of Democratic Milwaukee, I don't know. But yeah, that's what we're seeing in 2020, and it's unfortunate.
Mark says, even in progressive North Carolina, we have seen pushback. And here's a story that Helm just recommended. I've not read it. It says the coronavirus was an emergency until Trump found out who was dying, and then it became a problem. And this is a piece by Adam Server. I've got to tell you, folks, you have to read Adam's work in The Atlantic. I am so proud of his writing and seeing what he writes about, because Adam Server wrote, I think, one of the defining articles of our era. Anyone who hasn't seen it has to watch it. Maybe this, but I'm talking about another piece. When we look at the Trump administration and we see, boy, that's exceptionally cruel. Some policy that you didn't expect wasn't even a problem. Let's take people off food stamps. Let's do this. And you say, boy, that's cruel. And then he wrote this piece that said, the cruelty is the point. That's the reason why they're doing that. Everybody needs to Google that and read that story about why this matters. Googling that story will teach you about the cruelty, and that is the point here. And just to read this, what he's saying in this article in The Atlantic is that 6 weeks ago, Ahmaud Arbery went out and never came home. Gregory and Travis McMichael, who saw Arbery running through their neighborhood just outside of Brunswick, Georgia, and told authorities they thought he was a burglary suspect, armed themselves, pursued Arbery, and then shot him dead. And what they're saying here, to see the consequences see the sequence of events that led to Arbery's death as benign requires a cascade of assumptions. One must assume that two men arming themselves and chasing down a stranger running through their neighborhood is a normal occurrence. One must assume that the two armed white men had the right to self-defense, and that the black man suddenly confronted by armed strangers did not. One must assume that state laws are meant to justify an encounter in which two people can decide on their own volition to chase, confront, and kill a person they've never met. And again, the headline is, the coronavirus was an emergency until Trump found out who was dying. The pandemic has exposed the bitter terms of our racial contract, which deems certain lives of greater value than others. Bob?
That's excellent. And it goes straight to the logic or lack thereof that I saw in that letter from the DA. Everything, the bullet points that you just listed reflect the type of thinking that went into that. It was basically a letter explaining why no charges will be brought against the two shooters. And it painted the runner as the aggressor, as the person who, I don't know what he should have done. Did they expect him just to stand and wait and when two strangers in a pickup level weapons at him? Yeah, it's astounding.
Yeah, it's really scary. And if you're wondering why I said I was proud of Adam Serwer, he went to Columbia Journalism School where I taught for 20 years, and really proud of Adam and all journalists. And by the way, in this moment, we got to shout out to not just these two journalists, but every journalist who is trying to give out good, accurate, factual information. We are drowning, folks, in misinformation, disinformation, and it's really tragic, and it is killing so many people. Doug is pointing out, by the way, it was Milwaukee County, not the city. He had very little jurisdiction in David Clark, I guess. And Helm says, I write to work with a Trump supporter, and these people are gone. Their racism was in thinking that simply because a black man became president, any white man, regardless of intelligence, could be president. I had not thought of that angle, Vandana. Had you? That was part of the reason they thought, well, if he can do it, then certainly I've got to be smarter than any black man to do that.
Well, I think it was definitely a reason for his election, that kind of pushback. And we see that's happening across the world. Bolsonaro, you have Modi in India, you have Orban in Hungary. All of these people are elected as pushback, right?
Yeah, so you're seeing, Angela says, really important topic to bring up. And our friend Renee Edelman is also here, folks. Thank you so much for being here. We're almost out of time, but I know folks have lots of questions and comments. But I'm going to let each of our speakers give us kind of some of their thoughts for now. And I'm hoping they'll come back for another News You Missed episode in the weeks ahead. Susanna is talking about the pandemic video. That's really important. We should talk about that. I don't know if both of you have seen this. This is this crazy story, became a best-selling, kind of a big-selling book came out of this and all that. I don't remember all the details. All I know is on multiple of my family groups I have to tell people this is fake news. Don't believe it. These are anti-vaxxers pushing this out. You know what anti-vaxxers are. These are people who believe that vaccinations are bad. And by the way, it's not just right-wing conservatives who believe that. There's a whole other group of people led by Robert Kennedy Jr., like Robert F. Kennedy's son is leading the anti-vax movement in many ways, as are other people, Jenny McCarthy from Hollywood, who believe that vaccinations are bad for autism. And that has completely poisoned, if you will, because you know that what we need, even if we get some kind of miraculous vaccine by December or January, for it to succeed in America, you need 70 to 80% of the population needs to take this vaccine. There are going to be millions of people who do not believe that it's a valid thing to do. They think Bill Gates is going to use this as a chip to implant chips in us. They think so. All of this is led by the president, who is now, he says, in charge of the vaccine program after calling in to question vaccines. And this is really an issue for this country and for all of us. So that's something. And so the story is called Plandemic. I recommend all of you, I beg all of you, please go to Snopes.com, SNOPES.com, to anytime you see anything on the internet that's too good to be true or too bad to be true, it probably is. And so double, triple check it at Snopes.com before you hit that forward button. So Vandana, I'll let you give us your final thoughts, and then we'll go over to Bob.
I know, I was thinking about the anti-vaxxers. Meanwhile, over in South Asia and in most of the developing world, UNESCO put out a report recently saying that they're so worried about millions of children who are not going to get their vaccinations on time this year, and how that could lead to so many health problems. yeah, there's just so much. I find myself just overwhelmed with the amount of news and the amount of content that I'm consuming. And yeah, lately I've just been trying to balance it out. And there are some heartwarming things happening. And I think it's worth it to focus on those things as well to balance things out.
Thank you, Rose. Rose is sharing the Atlantic article we were talking about. Helm says, yes, Sree, the anti-vaxxers, and Pradnya says, do not get me started on anti-vaxxers. So let's go over to Bob Anthony and let's get his final thoughts.
Yeah, well, thanks again for this this chat. And I just want to give a tip of the hat to the journalists who have to keep working through this, who can't work at home and actually have to go out and do the reporting. And I see them with their masks and their broomsticks with the microphones attached to them and all of that. So just want to thank organizations like the Society of Professional Journalists. The Deadline Club is the New York chapter here, which I used to be the president of. The New York Association of Black Journalists, and NABJ, the national organization. All of those organizations have been doing a lot to coach journalists in how to handle just what you were talking about, the fake news, the questionable news that Snopes would report. But the Society of Professional Journalists and IRE they've put out this, I don't know if it's focused, fact-checking coronavirus stories. It's on their website. You can find it there. And there are other guides for journalists like that. So I thank the people who are doing the hard work.
Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. A big shout out to journalists and also to journalism students who are doing their work across the country. My own course at Stony Brook School of Journalism, the last day of classes was yesterday, and there's so many students who don't have paid internships this summer because so many of them are being canceled. If you're watching, if you have an opportunity for a paid internship and would like a young journalist to join you and help you out, please get in touch, because this is something that I'm worried about for so many people. Why should they be paid internships? Because otherwise only rich people will be able to do internships. And one of the things that we made so much progress on, Bob and Vandana, is that internships must be paid. I think in journalism, it became the understanding and the de facto situation, especially over the summer. And we want that to continue, as we say here. So big shout out to all journalists. And to these two journalists, my guests have been Vandana Menon, who is also producer on this show. She is Vandana_Menon. Please follow her on Twitter. Thank you, Vandana. She's a freelance journalist out of Philadelphia. And this guy right here, my friend, I'm just so inspired by you, Bob. Thank you. We didn't even talk this time about your 1.2 million followers on Pinterest and how he got there and what he's doing with those people. I hope you'll come back, Bob. Thank you so much. You are now 3 appearances on this show. So let's make it 4. You got to get ahead of Vandana and Rose, who also come back sometimes. So we got to keep you in there. Thanks very much, Bob. He's at New York Bob. She's Vandana_Menon. Please follow both of them. And I'm going to say goodbye to them and do a little housekeeping here. So thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye. What a great show, folks. 59 straight days. Only because of you am I able to have the energy to do this. Thank you so much for your support. We want to give you a little bit of information about how you can watch more and also connect with us more. First, please subscribe to my YouTube account, Sreenet, Sreenet. Please subscribe. You will get a lot of alerts about when we are doing useful and interesting topics. I want to just give you a sense of some of the things you may have missed this week. We did a show on Shakespeare and pandemics. We did a story on Americans in India. We did a story about screen addiction, a segment about screen addiction. We did a story about Chef Vikas Khanna, this incredible chef who's distributed 2 million meals in India and old age homes. We also did a story on an incredible man who I will never forget, this gentleman, John O'Leary. He was 9 years old when he blew up his house by playing with gasoline and matches. His was burned so badly, 100% of his body was burned. And then he is now teaching people how to live, even though he was thought of surely to die. And he is now written the #1 New York Times best-selling book, readinawe.com. Take a look. It's called In Awe. and you've got to learn about the great John O'Leary. I am so honored to have spent time with him just last Sunday. That's our positivity issue, our episodes. That's just 1 week, folks. We have 59 episodes. Please go into our YouTube archive, watch them there. Please connect with me on Twitter @Sree, Instagram SreeNet, YouTube SreeNet. Please connect with us. And I want to thank our sponsors and also tell you about tomorrow. So our sponsors are Nidhi Sinha, who brought us this wonderful ad for ProPublica. This is their 6th Pulitzer in 12 years. Congratulations. Journalism that holds the powerful accountable. Please go to ProPublica.org and place an ad right now. And you can do this too. If you have a nonprofit you would like to support, just message me, Sree @Sree.net, and we will talk about these very inexpensive ad rates we have. And we also want to thank our supporters, Pratham USA. Please make a donation right now by going to prathamusa.org or prathamusa.link/rise for Pratham. They are doing innovative work around education in India, and your dollars will be doubled. Double your dollars right now, folks, by going to prathamusa.org. And now I want to tell you about tomorrow, because we have so many exciting things happening tomorrow. Tomorrow is Mother's Day, and we have a fabulous edition of the New York Times Read Along. We have Pradnya Haldapur is going to be our guest. She's a mom, philanthropic strategist, and executive director at Magic Bus USA. Will be live on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. So please do join us. And we have been doing this for 5 years, reading the New York Times. Let me show you my eyes right here. Reading the New York Times for 5 years. So please take a look and join us 8:30 a.m., which is 6 p.m. in India, and just a little past the new day or past midnight in GMT. So we'd love to have you join us for that. We are also doing Thank a Mom on Mother's Day. You have till 10:30 p.m. tonight to register and read a message on the air and show a picture of your mom, or mention on air and a pic included in collage. Scroll a thank you across the screen and just do a shout out for your mom or a mom-like figure, your aunt, your grandmother, living or not with us anymore, doesn't matter. And half the proceeds will go to Nick Kristoff's wonderful C19 Impact Initiative. On the left, you can see an embarrassing photo of me with my mom, who is so beautiful then and now, in 1970 in Tokyo, Japan. And on the right is our executive producer's mom, Sudha Parekh, with her grandchildren, Sanjay and Emily is Neil's daughter. So we hope you will join us for these shows tomorrow. And if you would like to place an ad, just email me or go to that link again, which I'll show you. It's right there, digimentors.link/mothers, digimentors.link/mothers, or just email me and you're saying, what is Digimentors? Glad you asked. That's our company that's offering a conversion of in-person events to virtual events, making your own live web show, either 1 episode or 100. We are also streaming on multiple platforms. We're offering consulting, training, event amplification. And please let us know if you know anyone who's thinking of closing out their conference or postponing. Don't do that. Talk to me, Sree @Sree.net, and my team will help you. We have already helped dozens of projects already in the last 2 months, and we have so many more coming up. I think that's it for now. Let's see any final comments. Anand says, thank you. Ravi says, thank you. We're glad you are doing this. Really appreciate it. And Renee is saying hi and wishing Patrice Tanaka happy Mother's Day. And Patrice is going to be a guest on one of our positivity shows in the weeks ahead, which is very, very exciting. And so, and Rose, and Renee says, Rose Horowitz, yes, a big shout out to all journalists. And we certainly appreciate all of you joining and watching and learning. I think it's really important. Mark Lee says, thank you to Bob Anthony for telling us last time about Todd Beeman's paper in Reno. He's a fellow Marquette person, and he has reconnected with a friend. So Bob, you're having an impact right there, even sitting far away. We're not socially distant, we're physically distant, but we're connected in this amazing way. Thank you so much. Please email me. We want your suggestions, we want your feedback, and we want your sponsorship. So please let us know how you'd like to participate. And we are going to continue to do this 59 straight days, folks. Tomorrow means 60 days, and 60 days means 2 months. I cannot believe it. I am so grateful to our family and to everyone who makes it possible for us to live in a city like New York, the frontline workers, the grocery store clerks, the delivery folks, all of them make it possible for us to survive and thrive at this time when it's very, very difficult for so many millions and millions of people. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you, and please keep in touch. And we'll see you tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time and 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So 8:30 a.m. New York Times read along, 9 p.m. is our show is our Sunday night positivity show. And the timings in India are 6 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. 6:30 p.m. Sunday and 6:30 a.m. on Monday. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Big shout out to Scroll.in for hosting us too.